Hello and welcome once again to It's a Frankly Harry podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. I'm so glad that you could join me in the forest once again this week. Got a great show for you here today, and I guess I should warn you ahead of time. It's going to be one of those deeper, more philosophical type discussions, and it shouldn't be too emotionally charged or controversial, but it will require a little bit of critical thinking to maybe understand where I'm coming from on this. But, last week I did a part of the show on a dumb commercial, and, and it got me thinking about dumb things people have said to me over the years, and which I'll get into in a second, and along with some other things. But it got me to thinking that this world is, and society and culture is just full of distraction and deflection and detraction from a lot of what is really important in life. And I'm not talking about some of the things that I've harped on this show before in the past, like people being too distracted because they're so busy these days, or distracted by their cell phones or other gadgets, or by social media. And I'm not even really talking about things that distract anybody. Everybody needs some distraction every now and then from their lives. Whatever you do in your leisure time, whether you watch football on Saturday or Sunday afternoons, or go hunting and fishing, or go enjoy a fair this time of year. The State Fair of Texas just started, and I haven't gone to that a lot in recent years, but I would love to go again sometime. I don't know that I'll make it again this year because I live so far away, for those of you who didn't already know that. But life is just full of these distractions, and some of them are just painfully not obvious. Until I have noticed them recently. So I'm going to give a few examples, and they're very different examples, but I think they're all very appropriate for this subject. And one of the funnier ones, or I guess it's kind of funny now, but when I was a younger man and interested in dating and that sort of thing, like we all were, I think we all were, I don't know. But I might make a comment, an innocent comment, a good comment, a compliment, basically, about to some third party, usually some guy, who I would say, like, well, let's just take some fictional name here, like, that Susie over there, she's a really nice woman, attractive. I think I would really, all things being equal, and if we were both available, I would really enjoy dating her. And then, of course, this other person, could say, he's probably kind of a jackwagon, would say something like, Susie's already got a boyfriend. And of course, I didn't always know how to respond to that. I mean, I thank you, jackwagon, for sharing that with me. I probably already knew that, but that wasn't really my intent to go and steal her away from her boyfriend or cause trouble or anything like that. I was just making a compliment about that young lady as a person. So that person, that guy, or sometimes it was a girl, I guess, too, who would make this contrarian viewpoint, distracted from my pleasant comment, and I would always get kind of offended by that. And it kind of led to this feeling that I have about being generally misunderstood. But anyway, that was a distraction from what I really meant. And I always feel kind of resentful about it. And the other day I know I talk about other podcasts on here. I mean, many of you know that I'm also, I'm Christian, and I'm very into a very kind of a more intellectual viewpoint of spirituality these days. I think has come with my age and experience and study of the Bible and relationship with Christ and that sort of thing. And so Joe Rogan and Matthew McConaughey were talking about certain stuff, and I think both of them are. I mean, they're both quite a bit. They're a fair amount older than me, but we're all basically Gen X still, and we reached a time in our lives where we have had this experience, and we wonder about certain things, and things take on a new meaning in our lives. And the topic of the 10 Commandments came up, and whether they should be posted in schools or government places, law places, that sort of thing. And they had a little discussion about it. I don't know if McConaughey ever said what his position was. Rogan was against it because of certain things that I could probably. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, he was against putting them into the public square because of inclusivity and separation of church and state and all that stuff that I don't really care too much about. But somebody, I think, also told him once that while there's nothing wrong with the 10 Commandments and they still hold up very well today, that's actually a distraction from, perhaps where your priorities really should be spiritually from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. And then I would tend to agree with that kind of view because as great as the 10 Commandments are, and as much as they hold up and how they are a bedrock, literally on stone and rock themselves, stone tablets for our society and for ethics and morals and that sort of thing. And obviously a big part of Judeo-Christian teaching. They're from an earlier time in salvation. And that has, from the Christian viewpoint, has been not replaced. The commandments haven't been replaced, but they have been superseded by somebody in Jesus who is so much better than the commandments are by themselves, if that makes sense. So the commandments distract from people evangelizing for and getting to know Jesus, is what I would tell people. And that gives, I don't know, I had this other story that I had in high school with some trouble with administrators one time, but if you can kind of see my point of view there, and not everybody may, I mean, there's a lot of different opinions out there on Judeo-Christian theology and all that, but 10 Commandments were basically Old Covenant, the time of Christ, and his sacrifice and salvation is New Covenant, which is the time that we're in now. So if you can distinguish between those two, you might be able to see where I'm coming from on that. But anyway, so when people fight about the 10 Commandments or biblical teaching in schools, they may come at it from a good place, but they're still just distracting from what the priority really should be, is what I'm trying to say. So, and you can think of a lot of other examples in life. They're all over the place, and obviously there's way more than I could ever begin to list here. I suppose one other one that I would say, because some of you know that I'm also, while I haven't done it around other people or publicly, like I'm a fan of naturism, basically, nude recreation, right? Doesn't involve sex, doesn't involve, anything lascivious or anything like that. Although there's a lot of people who think that it does for some reason. But clothing is a distraction a lot of times from who people really are. And it doesn't matter if they're wearing like the teeniest bikini or they're getting geared up and to go ice fishing or something, in the 20 below weather or something like that. It detracts from who people are, and a lot of times it's used as a status symbol, fashion and things like that. That's another ubiquitous but simple example of what I'm coming from here. There's distraction everywhere. If you want something that is real and true, you're going to have to dig through that distraction. And I would also use the word deflection and detraction, the 3 Ds, to find what is real and good and right in our world. But you have to be able to just critically think about these things and recognize them and find them for yourselves, essentially. I was just paused and was thinking about a couple of things on those last 2 points. There was somebody that asked Jesus what the greatest commandment was, and not only did he keep the commandments, but he kind of in a way simplified it and made things very understandable. And he basically said, keep God number 1, and number 2, love your neighbor as yourself, the golden rule. And so he simplified things and kind of augmented them at the same time as well. So that's kind of adding to the 10 Commandments topic. Now, as far as the naturism topic, a lot of people aren't aware of this either, but you realize that in Jewish culture, from thousands of years ago as well as now, that the men at age, I believe I'm getting this correctly, I don't know for certain, but the men, of course, are circumcised, I think at age 13 now or something like that, because, of course, biblically in the Old Testament, that was an outward sign that they are God's people. Now, here's a little thinking exercise for you here. From our modern point of view, so that's, like I said, outward symbol of being God's people, but from our modern point of view, how does people know that they're God's people? Because these days we don't go around looking for the circumcised individual. Because back in those days, though, there were times when nudity in society was more accepted depending on the context. There was no indoor plumbing. So they had to bathe and use the restroom in public places. They were baptized naked, swam naked. Some of them worked naked, like the fishermen, like Peter. And other situations that presented themselves like that. And clothing was a luxury, it was quite expensive. But of course, the modern 21st century person reads these passages about circumcision and uncircumcision and things like that. They would always be wondering, like, it's an outward symbol, but would you ever see the outward symbol? Because that seems strange to us in our modern times. And makes me think, though, that they, life seemed more raw and rudimentary years and centuries and millennia ago, but somehow or another they may have been more on the level, I think, as far as priorities and such than I think we are now. And obviously I would love to hear your comments and your chime-ins about that. I really welcome them. I don't seem to get a lot of them, though, for some reason. Nobody ever gives me any feedback on it either. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you that's kind of tangential to what I was just talking about. When I was listening to the Rogan-McConaughey conversation the other day, I couldn't help but remember a time when I was in high school. This was back in the 90s, back in the early and mid-90s, and I went to this. We were a suburban school district, fairly well-to-do, and I would say generally somewhat right of center, although it got very. There were a lot of times it had a lot of political red tape for some reason, and lately a lot of people have been saying that. To do a retrospective on the 90s, a lot of people call it the secular 90s. And there was a lot of secularism going on, secular humanism, that type of thing. And we got into a debate, and I can't remember what exactly started it, a debate in class one time about why we couldn't, say why the faculty or administration couldn't say Merry Christmas to you anymore, or why teachers couldn't have Christmas decorations in their rooms and that sort of thing. And one of the teachers, I think the class that we were having this debate, said something that the district, I don't even know who took the time to research this or survey people or find this stuff, but said that there was hundreds of different beliefs out there, religious beliefs and all that. And so that makes it very difficult to recognize every one of them from an inclusivity point of view. And a lot of them want theirs to be recognized only and not recognize the other people. But it was always it was very chicken shit to me that the school district, because they took the easy way out, though. They say, well, we got all these different views, and we can't recognize every one of them. We probably can't even count every one of them, but that means we're not going to recognize any one of them. And I always thought that was really sad, and people, a lot of times, that's another thing we have in humanity. We tend to want to just take the easy way out when sometimes doing the hard thing would be better. Whether that involves, changing our way of thinking and learning a little bit of a higher level critical thinking nature, or trying to convince other people of the value of what you're, kind of teaching and preaching, as in my case. So, but that's all I really wanted to say today. So it's a fairly deep show. Hopefully I articulated that fairly well for you. Sometimes I'm not sure that I do, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up basically on time right now. Sharing is caring, as I say pretty much every week here. Please share this show with everybody you come across, family, friends, people at the barber shop, or at the pizza parlor, or the football game, or the fair, or whatever. Tell them about Frank Weber and his forest and It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. So hit that share button, that subscribe button. Would love to hear your comments and DMs, assuming that you're not a bot, of course. And that's about all I have for this week. So anyway, this is your host, Frank Weber of It's a Frankly Hairy podcast, signing off from the forest. See you again next time. Love you. Bye.